Recording in progress.
Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2023 UAF Arctic Innovation Competition presented by the one and only UCBelly Coal Mine. My name is Angelica Caetano, and I am a UAF College of Business and Security Management student. I'm currently studying business administration with a concentration in marketing. I'm honored to be your MC this evening as we bring AIC straight to your digital screen. I want to note that we appreciate all the creative ideas that are submitted to AIC. However, after a round of preliminary screening, only 10 submissions have made it to the main division semifinals for ages 18 and over. 5 of the competitors presented just last night, and tonight we will hear from another set of 5 presenters. Just as a reminder, they are competing for cash prizes up to $15,000 and 4 kicker prizes. We have an expert panel of judges joining us today. I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming Jack Wilbur, the 2023 Main Division Judges Chair from Design Alaska. We have John Bittner of Alaska Small Business Development Center. We have Jim Coley representing Mount McKinley Bank. Brian Holst joining us from the Juneau Economic Development Council. Kathleen Hook representing Noyan Utilities. Justin Seavey representing our presenting sponsor, UCBelly Coal Mine, and a UAF MBA graduate. New to the panel this year is David Sandberg from Respect Engineering and also a UAF alumni. Last but not least, we have a new judge, and her name is Jessica Taft from GCI. The Arctic Innovation Competition awards over $45,000 in cash prizes and awards. This would be impossible without the generous support of many of our beloved sponsors. We want to give a shout out to our presenting sponsor, UCBelly Coal Mine. You are all invited to join us at the Wedgwood Resort at 1 p.m. on Saturday, April 22nd for food, door prizes, and a final round of presentations. And now on to our founding sponsors. Founding sponsors have supported AIC and our mission of innovation and economic development since 2009. That list includes AEDC, Design Alaska, Doyen Limited, FEDC, Kinross Alaska, JEDC, and Northern Bank. Supporting the Cub and Junior divisions is Alaska 529. They are providing 7 education free savings plan scholarships at $2,000 each. The Classroom of the Future Award, which will be announced on Saturday, is going to a K-12 teacher who incorporates AIC in the classroom. Kicker prizes are supported by the Educational Legacy Fund, Alaska NSF Score, Mount McKinley Bank, and Respect. Competitors are eligible for kicker prizes as well as top 4 cash prizes. Want to vote on your favorite ideas? Fan favorite voting offers you a chance to select your favorite idea in each division. Recipients will receive $100 and a unique Lego trophy. Thank you to Chris Merrick from Allstate for sponsoring this award. Cast your votes once per day starting Friday the 14th and closing at noon Friday the 21st. Now let's get started with the presentations. Each competitor has 5 minutes to present their ideas, followed by 7 minutes of questions from the judges panel. There will be time at the end of the program to ask any follow-up questions from any of the competitors. First up is Airy Cherry. Let me know when you're ready. Give me a thumbs up, and once the timer starts, please start your presentation.
All right. Today, I want to talk to you about particulate matter pollution or PM pollution. And that is a well-known problem here in Fairbanks, but is also a global issue. Next slide, please. Particulate matter pollution contributes to 1 in 9 premature deaths globally. Next slide, please. It also has extreme environmental effects, with black particulate matter produced in Arctic communities sticking to icebergs, in turn expediting glacial melt. Next slide, please. Additionally, there is particulate matter contributes to increased amount of wildfires, which in turn creates even more particulate matter pollution. This becomes a cyclical, never-ending problem. Next slide, please. And finally, we often forget to talk about the economic effects of PM pollution, with nearly $8.1 trillion in losses every year worldwide. Next slide, please. Nothing currently addresses this problem adequately. Policy solutions are unable to address particulate matter now, and once enacted, will not be able to capture the problems that particulate matter has that's been produced over the past few decades. Industrial level purification devices are able to capture PM from escaping from coal or cement factories, but are unable to capture airborne particulate matter. Of the few outdoor air purification devices that exist on the market today, they all require HEPA filters, which are a great solution for indoor air purification, but due to the range of sizes of outdoor particulate matter, it's an inefficient solution for outdoor purification. Also, using a HEPA filter leads to increased costs for electricity and more frequent maintenance, not to mention a smaller air purification radius. With these considerations in mind, we designed the Airy Cherry. Next slide, please. The Airy Cherry scales down a tried and true, decades proven industrial level technology. Next slide, please. In 3 simple steps, the Airy Cherry's intake fan pulls in polluted air. It then ionizes the particulates, having them stick to collection plates along the sides. And finally, clean air exits the device. The Airy Cherry is able to purify approximately 1 city block per day. And we've done multiple prototypes and are excited to have an MVP coming hopefully the next week. We're working with the UCLA Patent Clinic on a pro bono basis to secure our intellectual property. Next slide, please. We want to launch the Airy Cherry in Fairbanks because we believe this is the area where particulate matter pollution reduction can have a truly huge impact. And the first form is through improved health conditions, which will save the residents of Fairbanks $2.7 million per year. Next is getting Fairbanks into EPA compliance. If not in EPA compliance with the levels of particulate matter this year, the federal government will pull $37 million in federal highway funding. And finally, we want to protect the beautiful Arctic community. By slowing down glacial melt and decreasing summer wildfires, we'll ensure that the beauty of the Arctic is available for generations to come. Next slide, please. This is a huge global market with over $101 billion existing in the outdoor air quality purification market this year, and it's planned to continually grow over the next decade. This summer, our customer waiting list will be going live. Next slide, please. For our team, this issue, we've conducted over 200 hours of customer discovery, and from our findings, we've actually had 2 product pivots to best meet the market and problem needs. Next slide, please. For our team, this issue is a deeply personal one. We each come from some of the most polluted cities in the world and are driven by this mission to improve our community's health and the environment. We're very grateful for our partners thus far who have helped us incorporate as a business, led us through different incubators, and given us funding grants. We've currently received about $25,000 in funding grants. Next slide, please. That being said, if awarded the Arctic Innovation Competition prize money, it will be well used. We still have a long way to go before we're ready to launch the Airy Cherry in spring 2024. As mentioned before, we hope to work in Fairbanks for our beta launch in winter of 2023. But before we can do that, we have to complete third-party testing and finalize our patent. The funding from the Arctic Innovation Competition would enable us to do this and begin reducing particulate matter pollution in Fairbanks as soon as winter 2023. We thank you so much for your attention and hope you'll join us on our mission to make clean air the cherry on top of living in Fairbanks. Thank you, and we'll now take any questions.
Thank you, Serena. Are you ready for some questions from our judges?
Yes.
Judges will each get to ask a question in a particular order. Starting off, questions will be Jessica Taft, followed by Justin Seavey and David Sandberg.
Thank you for that. I just would like to say that was an excellent presentation. Real clear definition of the problem, real clear definition of the solution, real clear definition of the impact and what's to come. You should be very proud of that presentation. That was excellent. Good job. I was actually thinking about that so much, I don't have a good question. Let's start with, I think my question for you would be, help me understand the manufacturing process. Like, what does this thing actually look like? What does it take? And what does it cost to put together?
Great. Yeah, thank you so much, Jessica, for your comments. I also want to point out a few other of my team members are joining as well. To address your question, I believe it was what is entailed in the manufacturing process, what does it take, and the cost associated? Great. So the manufacturing process is actually quite simple. We hope to do the manufacturing as close to the source as possible. So the materials include, to not give too much of our IP away, using cedar wood, step-up transformers. It's supposed to be a plug-and-play device, so other small electronics equipment, and some steel plating. The manufacturing process, currently we're just doing it by hand. It's been done in our backyards, and we recently got a lab space. And the cost is actually quite affordable. We're estimating the retail cost to be around $575. So if you saw the market size for Fairbanks, the $630,000, I believe, is calculated by installing enough area cherries to ideally cut 90% of Fairbanks's pollution.
And can you also, I'll just a quick follow up. It sounds like you have worked through this. Have you tested a prototype? Like, do you know that it meets that goal?
Yeah, so we have tested our initial prototypes using TempTop air quality monitor. We don't have a full MVP. We're planning on doing that actually Saturday is our full build now that we finished quite a bit of modeling. So we'll have more specific numbers there. But since we're scaling down to tried and true industrial level technology, those operate at a 99.5% efficiency. So we're actually bringing that goal down to 90%.
Thank you very much. I will pass it to
Thank you.
Justin.
Well, and I would echo Jessica, that was a very well put together presentation. Thank you. I'm curious about the scale. So you're scaling down an existing technology. How far down are you scaling? And is this intended like for a residential house or for a building downtown, or can you speak to that?
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you, Justin, for your question, for being here. So the industrial level, I wonder if you guys have one over at Usabelli Coal Mine, but these are huge devices. They're very expensive, very heavy. We're just taking the core components to make a quite small device. Our current MVP is going to be a 2 foot by 1 foot rectangle. And so the goal is for it to clean one city block of air, 72,000 cubic meters. It really depends on the community. Somewhere like Fairbanks, it might be best to put on a residential block since the main form of pollution is coming from wood burning stoves. But if you're looking at a place like Los Angeles, you'd want to do that at freeway intersections.
So is there an opportunity to have a couple of different sizes depending on the application just to optimize? Like what's the throughput on one of these?
Yeah, definitely. So the idea would be that 72,000 cubic meters per day. So we'd want to space them out ideally, but also that being said, if you know that there's 20 homes that are burning wood right here, then we'd probably place 2 of them right there in order to do that. And that would be done on a one-on-one basis with the customer to best meet their needs.
Cool. Thank you. I'll pass it to the next judge.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, I also want to echo what Jessica and Justin said. Great presentation. It was very clear. Your timing was excellent and really intriguing innovation that you're talking about here. I guess my initial thought is, how is that going to work in our extreme cold environment? We have 40 below, 50 below temperatures when people are burning, and the exceedances are the highest when the air is inverted. Do you have any any early answers there to cold temperature compatibility?
Yes, definitely. So we're actually headquartered in Los Angeles, so a bit different of an environment, but we have been considering that while the designing in Fairbanks process. So one reason we decided to do an intake and an exhaust fan is to create a slight negative pressure differential. So that way, let's say if it is snowing and there's a decent amount of wind, it will still be able to run. We're also looking at using a design similar to a chimney cap to put on top of it to protect it. So we're working on those as well. And that's one of the reasons we want to do our beta launch in Fairbanks to really test for that, niche weather up there.
Great. And then following up on that, so, there are ionization filters out there. Typically, they're for indoor air quality, and they're very limited in their size of the area they can treat. So could you kind of differentiate those two to kind of help anchor my mind on what makes this different?
Sure, definitely. So the indoor air purifiers, they mostly rely on HEPA filters, but you're right that they use some ionization technology. Ours is entirely an ionization technology, and the voltage that we're running through is quite a bit higher to capture particulate matter at different levels, down to PM1, and able to accommodate quite larger particulate as well. So the electric field is quite a bit stronger. That being said, there's no worries of it escaping the device. It's a properly grounded device as well.
Great. And so what kind of energy consumption does this filtration system require?
Great question. So it's 100 watts, which would be about charging your phone 20 times on a typical 5-volt charger or 5 watt.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for that. Our second presenter this evening is Brad Schmitz, explaining the idea Alaska English Adventures. Once you see your slides, give me a thumbs up to start the timer and you are ready to present.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Brad Schmitz. I live in Anchorage and have started my company called Alaska English Adventures. My company is the only language immersion tour company at this time in the entire state of Alaska. Next slide, please. So with my company, we have all these amazing features in Alaska, our volcanoes, our glaciers, our islands, rivers, coastline, etc. And that even with these great features and our booming tourism in the summertime, our economy is down as a state, and even with our tourism and such. So what I'm proposing with my company is to bring back like a new niche in tourism with students that are studying English in communities across the world. Next slide, please. So what we do, we have 2 tours right now that are featured in Fairbanks Gold Tour for the summer of 2023, and then exploring the Kenai Peninsula tour as well. On our tours, we offer ESL, English as a Second Language classes from a master's level teacher, and then enjoy some of the great summertime outdoor adventures that our state has to offer as well, such as viewing wildlife in Denali National Park, whitewater rafting on the Nenana River, in Denali National Park, ocean kayaking in Seward, gold panning in Fairbanks, and doing a lot of other great activities in that regard. Next slide, please. So here's a list. What is the problem or the solution to the problem that my innovation is addressing? We want to combine the great outdoor features and cultural experiences that are in Alaska, from Fairbanks to the Kenai Peninsula to Anchorage as well, but combine that with the ESL education component. And I think that this can be done in a very, very fun and very exciting way. So here's a listing: hiking to exit glaciers, sport fishing for salmon or rockfish, camping, campfires, s'mores, visiting places like Chena Hot Springs Resort, the Morris Thompson Cultural and Visitor Center, the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center in Seward, the Sea Life, or excuse me, Birdwood, the Alaska Sea Life Center in Seward, the Alaska Native Heritage Center in Anchorage, and the Anchorage Museum as well. Next slide, please. So who would benefit from my innovation? The way that I've seen it and the way I've built my company over the past several years is that it's a win-win-win situation. For students from countries that are getting their language immersion and education, they're getting the Alaska epic adventure experience with lifelong memories and new friendships. The Alaska students and families that work with these young people, they get exposure to new people and cultures from all over the world. And the businesses that will benefit from all of the state, tour operators, restaurants, and so on as well. Next slide, please. So how will the innovation be made? It started when I was an English teacher in Bundang, South Korea in 2005, and I had learned firsthand what a huge market there was for overseas language programs when I was there. And I had lived in Anchorage before that time, so I wanted to bring those students from Korea to Alaska. As it goes on, I was in Australia and kind of started my very first ESL adventure on the beach, moved to Alaska in 2013, formed the company, built a website. We did a philanthropy project throughout 2017 to 22, where we collected 8,000 pounds of food for charity. And then in 21 to 23, we've developed pen pals with kids from Alaska all over the world. Next slide, please. So here are just some highlighted photos from the beach in Homer, some great salmon, sunset at Breakup, and camping, or excuse me, kayaking in Whittier. Next slide, please. These are pictures of some of our pen pal friends, Daniel Oken in Turkey, Priska in France, and a care package that was sent from France, a care package from our friend in Hungary, and letters from Italy. Next slide, please. So Alaska English Adventures is an innovative and new form of tourism, and we provide a win-win-win situation for everybody involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Let's see what questions our judges have for your idea. Asking the questions this round will be Kathleen, Brian, and Jim.
Well, thank you very much, Brad. That was a good presentation. I really appreciate your effort to expand people's understanding about Alaska. But what I didn't hear about is really I see tourism trips to Alaska, but what functionally are you doing to expand their language?
Well, we have on our tours, one of the hosts on each of our tours is a master's level English teacher. And we'll be conducting and having English classes in the mornings tentatively of each day of the tour. So they'll learn through their classroom study, excuse me, language skills, as well as different content of Alaska subjects in different areas of where they're at. In Denali National Park, we'll be learning about Alaska wildlife. When we're in Seward, we'll be learning about World War II history in Alaska. When we're in Fairbanks, we'll be learning about what it's like to live in the Arctic year-round with guest speakers from various organizations to join us. So these students will get traditional classroom education, but then we'll be engaging them in language practice and using their skills while we're on tours, while we're in restaurants, anywhere that we're on the tour as well.
So is that the innovative part of this, is that you've designed these? Do you have special classes that you've designed for the tours and like a module type of thing?
Yes, we have. Like we have the different subject areas around Alaska that will be taught, but then a lot of the curriculum will be developed with our English teachers that are being hired to come to Alaska and to conduct the classes while they're here as well. So there's experience. I'm sorry,
you still have to develop these modules.
At this time, yeah, I have not sold any seats for any ESL tours. So we're still working on bringing students for the tours at this point. I've done some regular, like English speaking local tours out of Anchorage the past 2 summers. And then I've worked on developing a pen pal program over this time as well, tentatively to that these kids in foreign countries will one day come to Alaska and join us for a summer tour.
And so just one more question, I'll let the other judges. So as you're conducting these classes, you're out in the field. I mean, you're at Denali Park. So how are you creating a learning environment there? What kind of tools are you planning to use?
Well, we're doing some basic teaching, like resources using dry erase boards and such, as well as having modern technology that we'll be able to conduct classes with the students while they're here as well. A lot of the places where we'll be staying, I do research to make sure that they have a classroom or a meeting room available within their accommodations that will have a classroom like setting to be able to use. But that's the fun of an outdoor adventure in Alaska. You know, some of our classrooms might be next to the campfire. So that's like really in the element as well.
Thank you, Brad. I'll
Yes,
let Brian goes next, I think. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you. Thanks for this presentation. So 2 questions. One is, are there specific languages that I know you're teaching English, but speakers of other languages? Are there countries that you targeted, or is this going to be for any language, any native language speaker, non-English?
Tentatively, yeah, we have to do an evaluation with each student to find out their English level before they come. And they're going to have to be at least a moderate level of English speaking and understanding before they'd be able to come on a tour. So that part of that evaluation is done on an individual and a class by class basis as we're getting to know our customers or our students that way.
And then just another question, thinking about the finances of this. So what is the premium? Because it sounds like it's a regular tour, plus you add on this language learning component.
Correct.
So how much more are you going to be charging from your competitors, and why do you think that? What analysis have you done to think that there's a market out there for paying more for this kind of tour?
Well, right now for a 10-day Kenai trip, the price is $33,415. And then for our Fairbanks trip is $2,275. And for a tour, because that includes 3 meals a day, all adventure activities, all in Alaska transportation, all nights of lodging, insurance as well, that for most tour companies that I mentioned, they all say that it's relatively inexpensive, or it's a lower budget type of tour for the duration of time that we're going to be here. And what I've learned kind of over my research over the past 4 or 5 years is that these ESL students that would be coming, a lot of the time, they might not be able to afford the really higher budget tours that are offered by other tour operators around the state.
Hey, Brad. So again, back to the language thing, I'm a little confused. I would almost think you would want to focus on one at a time, like it's a group of Chinese, or it's a group of Germans. I mean, you wouldn't want 5 or 7 different language speakers all in one tour, I wouldn't think. So I'm curious, have you thought out what markets you might target first?
Well, most closely, we're looking at Asian markets, tentatively Japan and Korea, like with my personal experience in Korea, and then with connections that I've made in the Asian markets with Japan as well, knowing that there's a large market for students that are learning English that would be able tentatively to afford a tour and then come to Alaska as well.
Okay. And then in your paperwork, I thought I saw something where it said where maybe these governments might actually help subsidize that. Did I read that correctly?
I've been researching that and been communicating with partners that I've made in these countries to see if that could be a possibility, and if they would be able to help fund tours in that regard as well.
So if they subsidize it, can you raise the price a little bit?
I would be happy to. Yeah, by all means.
Okay. That was the last question I had.
Thank you.
I have a question. Is there some sort of certificate or accreditation that you can either provide or that you need to have in order to be a instructor for these people?
Not that I've learned specifically, since we're really trying to do a new thing that's in Anchorage or in Alaska for that matter. I have not discovered that. We will provide a graduation certificate though, for when the students are finished, that they can definitely take home.
Thank you, everyone. Our next presentation is Robert Warner explaining the idea fireproofing your grill. Once you see your slides, give me a thumbs up to start the timer and you are ready to present.
All set. Thanks allowing me to present my fireproofing your grill to the Arctic Innovation Competition. First slide, please. First slide. Grill fires. Grills are the last of the dangerous appliances in the house. Basically, cooking is the leading cause of house fires. There's approximately 400,000 of these per year. And barbecues are responsible for about 10,000 of these. Microwaves, coffee makers, hair dryers, heating units, laundry dryers, all appliances that are a threat have safety devices embedded in them to limit their destructive drive. Electric stoves even now have electronic cutoffs that listen for a fire alarm to turn off their heating elements. It's basically time that barbecue grills be engineered to provide safe cooking for the family. Without these innovations, barbecue grills will be slowly outlawed. Next slide, please. The rules in Anchorage are that you're not allowed to have a barbecue grill on any deck or balcony, especially in multifamily homes or construction, and you're not allowed to have it anywhere near a combustible wall. These are all places where people like to actually grill, however. Other places in the country have even more draconian sort of rules or regulations that don't allow you to use these devices anymore. Next slide, please. Grill fire risks are mostly human dependent. So failure to clean the grill, including the grease trap, having the grill too close to something that could catch fire, and leaving the grill unattended, as well as our favorite grilling while drunk. About 20,000 patients a year go to the emergency room because of injuries involved in grills and grilling. And about 10,000 of these are thermal burns, which are fairly hard to treat. Next slide, please. So I designed a grill fire abatement system. You can see up there on the right, a grill sprinkler system that protects decks and houses from uncontrolled grill fires. Water from a garden hose is piped into a standardized fire sprinkler system that attaches to your grill. Any fire that sustains temperatures over 200 degrees Fahrenheit will cause a sprinkler head to activate and put out the fire. Next slide, please. Attempts at keeping grills safe are fairly limited at this time. They suggest you have a fire extinguisher near to your grill, but that still requires human intervention. A fire blanket is normally used in kitchen fires, but is definitely inadequate for these big fires. There's no known automated outdoor grill sprinkler systems on a patent search. A garden hose at the ready does not really stop the flow of the propane fuel. And most electrical appliances have thermal switches, and that's about the only device that's out there. Next slide, please. How it works, you attach a garden hose to the grill base. The hose is turned on. A pressure switch activates when the water pressure goes above 10 pounds per square inch. Water fills the hose system, the sprinkler head. A solenoid switch that controls the propane flow is activated by the pressure switch. Propane is allowed to flow to the burners. In case of a fire, the sprinkler head opens, allowing water to put out the fire. And propane flow to the fire is stopped by the drop in water pressure. Next slide, please. This is a diagram of how the system works. The blue is where the water goes. It goes from the right from the water supply to a water pressure switch, which is connected to the solenoid propane control valve. And then the water goes to a commercial grade sprinkler head. When the valve is activated, the pressure in the system falls, allowing the solenoid propane control valve to shut down and stop your fire. Next slide, please. The design, all piping is designed with either PEX or copper, and the sprinkler heads are standard design for house sprinkler systems. The sprinkler pole must overlie the grilling surface, yet be placed far enough away to prevent accidental firing. The components are easily replaced after the firing and does not incapacitate the grill. So the solenoid to control the propane flow is currently 12 volts on the prototype, but I've designed a new one that doesn't actually require any power. The design can be incorporated into any grill type and can be folded when not in use. The parts for the current unit are 3D printed. A special 200-degree Fahrenheit sprinkler head, which is commonly used in kitchens, is used in this device. Other than the availability of water from a garden hose, no other services are needed. The total cost would be about $30. Here's a demonstration of the grill prevention system. It takes quite a bit of heat actually to blow off one of these sprinkler heads. It boils the fluid and then allows the valve to sort of open. The system, there it goes. The system currently cuts off the two elements of.
I'm sorry, Robert. I don't mean to cut you off, but
No
5
problem.
minutes. Well done. Moving right into the judges' questions will be John, Jack, and Jessica. John, what questions do you have for this idea?
Yeah, thank you so much, Robert. I appreciated the presentation, and I was curious. So it's been a while since I put a thermometer on my grill, but you mentioned that the sprinkler is triggered at, did you say 200 degrees Fahrenheit?
Yeah, the normal ones in bedrooms and stuff trigger around 150, but the ones that are used above kitchen stoves are triggered at 200. I'm thinking of when I grill, I think I may hit that like on a, if you're doing a high sear or something. 200 just seemed a little low to me. Is it possible to like, I don't want it going off right when my steak is just hitting a nice thing. Like, I think that's going to be a design flaw there, but I don't know for a fact like how hot my grill gets. Yeah, I actually studied this fairly carefully when designing this, and the grill surface is of course way hot. But as you rapidly go above it, it drops quite a bit to about 125, about another 1.5 feet above it. And with a closed top, the radiant heat really doesn't come out of it.
And that was my other question. So it's if sometimes when you grill, you keep it closed to get that thing. So when that happens, the sprinkler though would be on the outside of that grill. So that wouldn't be like if there was a fire, if the grill top was closed, that's not gonna.
Most of these fires are kind of to control the surrounding area. So if your grill starts on fire, it starts something else on fire. The grill itself, the grease trap sometimes burns a little bit. Everybody's had this happen to them. But essentially, this is to keep the surrounding area from catching on fire and destroying your house.
Well, I am a terrible cook, so you've definitely created a device that I understand and would probably use in my everyday life. Well done. I don't know about the broader market, but I could definitely see myself setting my deck on fire. So I'll pass it off to, is it Jack? Are you next? Oh, I think you're muted, Jack.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't have any questions. I'll pass it on to Jessica.
Thank you, Jack. I'm going to ask a real rookie question that's going to it's real clear that I'm in a panel of judges who have a lot of technical, mechanical backgrounds. But it's my impression that grill fires are often grease fires and that you're never supposed to put a grease fire out with water. Can you help me understand that a little better?
Yeah, that's totally true. In a kitchen where you have a pool of grease, that's caught on fire, it's really dangerous to throw water on top of it because the steam will actually blow the grease everywhere and light your whole kitchen on fire. But in these cases where you're basically trying to control the heat and the flames surrounding your grill, the fire department suggests water is the best way of doing this. I've actually checked this out with a fire control specialist. And the allowances for having sprinkler systems on your deck, you are allowed to have this for controlling basically gas fires. There's no other way to control them.
I was with you until that last statement. Isn't the way you put them out to starve them of oxygen? So you, like, best practice is to turn off the gas first and then close the grill to starve it of oxygen.
Yeah, those are all basically really good things. You want to, that triangle that everybody describes is one of oxygen, fuel, and heat. What water does is remove the heat, and what the propane valve system does is remove the source of the fuel or the propane. So both of those together. The oxygen is hard to control in an outdoor environment, that kind of thing.
For sure.
A fire blanket is one of those things that's used for that routinely, but it'd be almost impossible to design something that would totally encompass it.
And just one final question, because I'm with John Bittner. I'm not a skilled griller, so let's be clear there. One of the reasons you mentioned, you just stated that you don't put water on a grease fire is the splatter. What is the danger to someone who is close to the grill when the water hits a grease fire?
The grill, it wouldn't be one of those things that you would have to worry about. The grease is actually contained within the grill, but it's one of those things. It's a pretty dangerous situation when your whole grill goes up, and this would be the best way of actually controlling it.
Okay, well, I feel like I'll check in with you. I mean, I'm a Weber person and I use a chimney, so I feel like I need to like check in with you and make sure I'm doing it all right. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
So I do have a question
Um,
now.
Jack,
I do.
sorry to interrupt you, but can you put your microphone down on your headset?
Thank you.
Mhm.
So do you think that you would be able to convince like the Alaska, the Anchorage Muni to relax its rules if people use this device, or is that gonna gain anything as far as, where it can be used and changes in code and stuff like that?
Hard to tell what will actually change codes and things like that, but definitely grills are dangerous kind of weapons in most cases. So any attempt to improve the actual safety of these things would be looked upon by the fire authorities as going in the right direction. So that would be something that would probably say, okay, can be accommodated because you apply these safety terms to it.
And do you think that you would be able to get any statement from NFPA? Would you think that you would be able to get them to go through their testing process on this and get a statement from NFPA?
That would be hard to say, but just about every other device in your house has some protective mechanism to prevent, unbridled fuel and fire and that kind of thing. And barbecues should go the same way. They should be safer.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I want to go ahead and take a moment to highlight our kickers, which award $2,000 each. We have the Arctic Kicker, sponsored by Respect Engineering. We have the Alaska Student Kicker from Mount McKinley Bank, the Climate Adaptation Kicker by the Educational Legacy Fund, and we have the Sustainability Kicker, sponsored by NSF Alaska EPSCoR. The top 10 ideas are competing for these 4 kickers in addition to the top 4 cash prizes. We only have 2 presentations left for this evening. Up next is Demetrios with Get By. Remember to watch the countdown clock. And once you can see your slides, give me a thumbs up to start the timer, and the virtual stage is yours.
Excellent. Hello, everyone. My name is Demetrios Alexiadis. First slide, please. My name is Demetrios Alexiadis. Can you go back to the first slide, please, in the presentation? Yes, thank you very much. I'm the founder and CEO of Get By. We help people find work. Who? Well, people who don't have resumes and people with prior justice system involvement. Next slide, please. So I know what you're thinking. How do we do this? Well, how could this possibly work? Well, we do the vetting and the background checking so that our workers can connect with clients who need helping hands. Your next question is probably, well, what happens if something happens at my business? Well, Get By workers are federally bonded and they're insured. So your next question is probably, why me? Why am I working on this? Why is this me working on this problem? Next slide, please. Well, knowing that, people with criminal histories need to find work is something that I have personal experience with. So next slides, please. I'm a convicted felon. I pled guilty to my crime and I owned up to it. That brought immense shame and stigma to my life, but it hasn't stopped me from moving forward. I'm capable and I'm willing to work hard. I released without reoffending and I completed my bachelor's degree, but I found that the stigma of my crime has prevented me from finding career opportunities. So that's why Get By exists and I feel called to do this work. So that's me. Let's talk business. So are businesses having staffing issues? Next slide, please. This past December, there were a total of 11.3 million total job openings across the United States. That's 222 million unfilled shifts across all US industries. In Alaska, we had 31,000 job openings or 620,000 unfilled shifts. So I would say yes, businesses are struggling with staffing and high turnover. Next slide, please. So in Alaska, we have hundreds of thousands of unfilled shifts while our recidivism rate is still 58%. For Alaskans returning to our communities, if they don't find employment within 2 years of release, they're twice as likely to return to incarceration. Employment and education are both highly correlated with deterrence from criminal behavior. Imagine instead a different world. Within 2 years of release, we welcome them back into our communities and bring some purpose into their lives. Next slide, please. So at Get By, we see increasing the employment of formerly incarcerated and underemployed people as a win, 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 win. We got a lot of winning today. Businesses get workers, job seekers get jobs, society has less crime and is more equitable, and government budgets decrease. So how do we do this? How do we make money? How is this a business? Next slide, please. Well, Get By is a business-to-business software as a service company. This is a very noisy slide. We deliver the traditional staffing agency services at a fraction of the cost on demand. This allows small businesses to test out workers shift by shift without having to worry about the onboarding process. So we do that by charging a 35% service fee on hourly wages, which covers the cost of what clients would be paying to background check and employ workers anyways. And we charge an optional scaling $1,000 permanent hiring fee. So looking at the market size for this opportunity, Alaska has 21,200 hospitality employees in Anchorage and Fairbanks alone. Applying the average absenteeism for the hospitality industry of 10 missed days of work a year, the serviceable obtainable market for just the Anchorage and Fairbanks hospitality industry, one industry, is $7.42 million annually. Applying that same assumption for the 15 million leisure and hospitality employees across the United States gives us a TAM of $5.25 billion annually. And that's just for servicing the missed days in a single industry. So how does Get By work? Well, it's a web platform where businesses list and fill shifts on demand using second chance friendly hiring practices. So like I said before, we do the vetting, which allows businesses to connect with workers who are qualified and who need opportunities to prove themselves. The process of listing a shift takes less than 5 minutes, and then those shifts are displayed to workers on our live worker app. The app includes a credentialing system that displays worker credentials and previous work history. You can find it now on both app stores. Check it out today. Get By will eventually, we're having this roll out, will include a common review and tip system that's on most gig apps following each shift, which will enable both the client and the worker to rate and share about their shared experience together. This allows workers to start building transferable skills and professional credibility in their community so that they're judged on how they show up shift by shift, not their employment and criminal histories. So here's some updates. I've worked the first 10 shifts. I decided that Get By needed employees. I ran a successful GoFundMe campaign. I'm running out of time, but if there's one thing I'd like for you to take from this pitch today, the short time that we've had together, is that there are thousands of amazing Alaskans who are looking for their opportunities, and you have those opportunities. And you can connect with these businesses, you can connect with these workers today by downloading the app as a worker or by finding us at getby.org. We're in the business of building people and community
Demetrius.
one shift at a time.
Thank you. We have Justin Seavey who will start the questions, followed by David and Kathleen. Justin, the stage is yours.
Well, so I want to I want to say that that was a very well put together presentation, and this is a very, very important issue. So I applaud you for taking it on. It is a really potentially a unique solution for some of the labor challenges that have been experienced. Beyond the vetting and background checking that you talk about, do you look at this as a job matching service? Like, does that vetting include potential skill sets and trying to match them up with employers, or is it just the background check piece?
So I think that's a fantastic question. Thank you very much for asking it, Justin. I think there are fantastic pathways through using Get By for individuals to start building out these skill sets and to start using it as a point of reference for, for instance, if someone wanted to work at the UC Belly coal mine, but they haven't really had a lot of shop experience or labor experience. Okay, well, if you don't have the ability to secure one of these jobs because you can't pass a background check and you're dealing with this stigma, at the very least, if you're using Get By, you can show shift by shift that, hey, he's worked in a shop this many times and this is what the review looks like. He's got this many stars for all of that type of work. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a job matching service because, just as in most of the gig apps, the individual is going to have the choice to opt into working the shift. It's not going to be Get By going out of our way to match these individuals with shifts. Once they're onboarded onto the platform, they get to make their own schedules. And if they're inactive on the platform, we'll just offboard them and onboard more active users. So I hope I answered your question though.
I think you did. I think the only other follow-up question I would have is, have you explored what else might be available in the community as far as partnerships with nonprofits, or maybe I don't want to use the word subsidy, but where some of these jobs would be potentially entry-level jobs, and you're talking about the wages that go along with that.
I don't want to spill the beans on this, Justin. There is something very exciting in the works for Get By in this framework. What I can say is that I wrote a letter of support to basically support a nonprofit organization in the state of Alaska that's pursuing subsidized wages for re-entering folks. And so with those wages, basically, I could approach businesses and say, hey, I've got workers. Hey, I've got wages. Put people to work, and then we'll start this shift machine, start developing people, and then connecting those people with people who are like businesses that are actually interested in hiring them full time. That optional scaling permanent hiring fee is also something that's like interesting, and it works in a unique way. It scales down the more someone works on the platform. So we see it as a win-win if businesses that are interested in hiring people permanently have more information that's been brought together by that person using the platform. Again, I hope I answered your question.
No, you did. I want to make sure I leave some time for my other judges, but thank you.
I guess I'm next. Thanks, Demetrios, for your presentation and for your enthusiasm with your mission. It's great. I know we have a labor shortage, and this is a pool that I think is underutilized, like you said. But one thing that comes to mind, you mentioned vetting. So that's probably a big potential barrier for people to use it. So they want to trust that your vetting is adequate and providing them with safe employees. Could you go into what that vetting would look like?
Yeah, for sure, David. This is a classic question that I get every time I pitch. And I'm very glad that it's something that's consistent because I've been able to refine my answer to this question considerably. So the vetting process is basically, in terms of this background check and this stigma that we're really dealing with here, if I meet with you as a business owner and you have X shifts that you need filled tomorrow, well, I'll ask you as the business owner, what crimes are deal breakers for your business? Now, using the background check technology that I have that's implemented for the business and already integrated, I'll be able to filter out those candidates. So then if you do list shifts to the platform, those individuals will never see those shifts. And so I can do that on a per business basis by applying that filter to the background check mechanism. So that's just addressing the stigma. The other side of this is treating the person like a human being and having a conversation with them and literally getting them on the phone and saying, hey, look, I'm here to try to get you work. I've been through this myself. And it's more than just the background check, right? Like you have to have that conversation with the person, because if you find out they're, coming down off of meth, or they don't have a place to stay, or, maybe they're in the halfway house still, it's going to be something that requires a little bit of finesse. So I hope I answered your question wholly there, David.
Yeah, you bet. I'll pass it on to Kathleen.
Thank you for the presentation. So my question is around how people are going to find you and maybe work this. Marginalized individuals aren't necessarily going to have a phone, aren't going to be able to work an app, have access. I mean, how will people find you? How will they continue to find work with you if they don't have those things?
So I think there's two ways to answer this question. I think first off, I think people are keen on saying that Get By is a re-entry app. And so I think there is something to be said about, I re-entered society myself, right? I got out of jail and I had a cell phone and I knew how to use it. And then I had my conviction. And so I still had to figure out how to fit into the labor economy. So whereas what you are saying is correct on one hand, there are also other people who are re-entering, who are actively looking for work, who are actively getting back into school to finish their degrees, to carry on with their lives. And so by not providing a solution in the labor marketplace for that individual to find labor market opportunities, flexible work opportunities, we're not really providing the full slate of options to people to find fulfillment in the way that they can. And so, how are people going to find me? I'm currently very tied into very many reentry organizations across the state. I'm on the Anchorage Reentry Coalition steering team here in town. I volunteer for 2 other nonprofits. Thank you very much for your questions. I really appreciate everyone's time today.
Thank you, everyone. Our last competitor for tonight is Eleanor Locke, showcasing the optogenetic 3D bioprinter. Eleanor, make sure you can see your slides and give us a thumbs up to start your presentation.
Hello? All right. Hello. I'm ready to go when you are. Hello, my name is Eleanor Locke. I am the owner and founder of E42 Technologies, and today I'm presenting to you my optogenetic 3D bioprinter, and the way that I believe it has potential to handle the way we handle transplants across the globe. Next slide, please. The long-term goals of this printer are intended to address the woes of my fellow trans peers regarding current transition-related surgeries while addressing the very real problems we as a society face regarding organ transplants. It is my hope that this printer will one day provide the means for replacing lost limbs entirely, with the short-term goals of minimizing the current risks inherent in live and cadaveric transplants. Next slide, please. Currently, the wait list to receive transplants is ridiculously high, with some individuals waiting over 5 years for a viable match, and that doesn't necessarily guarantee the transplant will be viable or won't be rejected in the following years, if they can even get the transplant due to transportation-related errors. There have been reported cases of organs arriving damaged, sometimes with tire tracks on them. In May of 2022, one hospital had to throw out 4 kidneys in 1 week. Recently, I had the opportunity to speak with some EMTs regarding the way this could best help patients based on what they have had to respond to. Their answer was burn victims. Right now, burn victims in Alaska have to make repeat trips to Seattle burn wards for treatment. They believe that being able to have skin grafts printed locally would reduce the trip to the burn ward from repeat trips to 1. Next slide, please. The United States government has recently addressed this growing crisis. However, I cannot help but wonder how long it will be until we face this exact same issue again. After all, 17 people die every day waiting for a vital organ. Makes one wonder how many of these people died because of shipping-related issues alone, or even simply because their organs got lost in transport. I, for one, could not fathom waiting 5 years for a viable kidney only to be told it was squished. Next slide, please. This chart here shows the survivability of transplants from living and dead donors. By having patient-based stem cell organs, these numbers could be raised drastically and remove the need for cadaveric donors entirely. After 5 years, the survivability of a lung transplant drops to 55%. With long-term goals being able to print a fully functional replacement lung based on the patient's own DNA, the long-term survivability should raise drastically. After all, any improvement over 55% is great. Next slide, please. This design bridges multiple fields such as optics, lasers, and light physics, gene editing and sequencing, CNC machining, and stem cell biology. The printer design itself will be open source in nature to build trust with the public, gain scrutiny beyond financially interested parties, and provides room for other organizations to provide their own designs, in which in turn decentralizes the biomedical field. Next slide, please. The printer itself will be a standard 3-axis machine running XYZ axes as a major axis. Using principles from SLA printing, a UV curable resin will be used. This resin floods the print basin and serves as the build medium. The tissue itself is then printed upside down. Using an optical pickup unit, often found in CD drives, the laser itself can be fine-tuned and positioned to achieve the necessary resolution for the print, as having resolutions as fine as 50 microns are necessary, which standard NEMA 23 motors cannot operate in without high degrees of microstepping, which loses accuracy. By using off-the-shelf components, the printer itself becomes significantly more affordable without the need for high-resolution servos, steppers, or LCD screens. Sporting 2 low-wattage laser diodes, one laser is fixed at the laser frequency necessary for the carrying of the build medium. The other is a variable frequency laser to utilize different wavelengths for the specialization of the stem cells. The build medium has only a handful of parameters to be considered viable, such as being biodegradable and biocompatible. And once a viable build medium is found, stem cell cultures will be introduced to find the viable stem cell density to achieve cohesion between cells. Next slide, please. The printer itself will be utilizing current advances in gene editing and begin testing variation of single cells under different wavelengths. This also provides the means to test viability of cells within the build medium. Once the process proves viable, layers of skin cells would be printed to test viability of different cells. From there, we would develop a cell mapping software that effectively creates plots of individual cells in the build and translates this to
Hey, we cannot hear your audio all of a sudden. You want to check that, please, for your last 30 seconds.
I cannot hear anyone. Why is this?
You're good now. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have 30 seconds left and we can hear you now.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Was there an issue or?
Yeah,
Okay.
it cut out, but you're fine now.
Could you let me know where I left off or what you last heard? Okay.
How about the second column on the slide you're seeing?
Okay. Well, I will continue with the with the AI process. So an AI will be developed or fine-tuned to generate cell mapping that will be processed within the aforementioned slicing software. Next slide, please. I intend to have an open source design in order to not replicate the early failures of filament-based printing where organizations try to close source everything. The print software would be open source along with the AI to help other biomedical fields where the build medium and gene editing procedures would be closed source to provide a guaranteed revenue stream. The next slide is my citations.
Thank you for that, Eleanor. I hope
you.
you're ready to answer some of the judges' questions. We have Brian Holst, Jim Cully, and John Bittner.
I'm excited to answer all the questions.
Eleanor, you're going to be here all night if you have to answer all my questions because I'm not sure I understand all of it. So help me out here. So your invention is the printer that does this with live cells, or it's a process because these sort of printers already exist? Let me understand a little bit.
So my innovation is combining a handful of different fields. Current processes are at minimum a two-step process of building the scaffolding in which stem cell cultures are injected into and then are developed from there. Whereas my process is combining the stem cell cultures and the scaffolding into one process. So effectively a print in place model, which is the most effective way to really utilize 3D printing.
Okay, thank you. Is that the prototype behind you?
Oh no, this is actually one. So like I mentioned earlier, early failures of 3D printing were closed source designs. This one is actually a clone of a highly profitable open source printer known as the Replicator 2, which was built by MakerBot. Just to prove that an open source printer can in fact be profitable.
So I guess I have a question. Are there other people that are working on this same type of problem? It would seem that printing stuff like this seems to be something I would think other people are working on.
So the field itself is currently highly sought after, but as I mentioned, there's no current process that streamlines everything into one single process. The process is currently a two-step process, like as I mentioned, first printing the scaffolding and then injecting the specific pre-specialized stem cultures to then fill in the scaffolding. Whereas my process is combining it all into one to reduce overall print time and reduce complexity for the end user.
I didn't have any other questions. Yeah.
Thank you. When it comes to the material that you would be using, the printing, the resin, I think you called it, like what types of certifications and sort of rules and regulations do you have to go through to get that portion approved? I mean, I'm assuming the whole thing is probably fairly complex, but that in particular, if you're going to be integrating it with humans.
Most definitely. I know there's going to be FDA approvals that I have to go through. I imagine there will be some sort of testing that has to go through. I haven't quite gone that far into the process as I've been focused more on the theoretical aspect of it, trying to figure out how all these different parts can integrate properly, and if I can even find, and of course, the viability of the resin itself. Though there are definitely certifications that have to be made because, as you said, using this type of thing with humans, that's a whole ballpark in its own right, a whole legal matter, I'm sure, that Pandora's box.
And do you anticipate you would be doing that research and that development, or are you going to develop the printer itself and then, you know, if you build it, they will come, someone will figure out how to design the resin, or do they have to be developed in connection with each other in order for it to be viable?
So my plan is to not entirely outsource the resin research as I will be doing testing and finding, first off, biocompatible resins in the first place that are UV curable. And if there aren't in the first place, I would definitely have to outsource that process.
Eleanor, you mentioned open source. Sounds like that's like a principle for you. I'm also trying to think of how you protect your invention and how do you eventually make money. I could see that you have this brilliant idea and you could license this to someone else. Tell me why you're choosing open source or how you intend to you profit from this, or you just want to contribute a great idea to the world.
It's a little bit of both. I believe myself as having a duty to the world as a whole, but also open source doesn't necessarily not mean profitable. Like I said, this right here is a clone of a highly profitable open source design. Even then, there are still the aspects of the gene editing procedures, for example, the process of actually modifying the stem cells for use within the printer would be in-house, would be closed source, as that would be a very crucial stepping stone in the process of developing these organs. And same with the resin. The resin itself would be closed source and sold by the company, as that would be that'd be quite a loss to have that aspect thrown out there. But the printer itself, having that design distributed to the public and provides feedback that I may not necessarily get without having to go through. Well, no, I firmly believe that there's no better way to uh, find issues within a system than open source. Open source is a really wonderful tool for finding problems and having the community contribute to a project that they believe is good for the world.
So another further question, I guess, is what do you estimate this is going to cost you to get where you want to be?
That's a great question. For the printer, building the printer itself will be relatively cheap, as I plan on using off-the-shelf components. The printer itself, I'm estimating to be about $200 to $400. As for the gene editing and the resin research, it can be in the ballpark of $5,000 to $10,000, as those are very expensive fields to work in. And finding companies that are actually working with like the CRISPR gene editing and working with biocompatible resins are far and few in between.
Thanks. I didn't have any other questions.
Right, sounds good. So I want to say thank you to all of our competitors. It's a huge deal to make into the AIC semifinals. We appreciate all the hard work and creativity that you've put into your ideas. You all did an amazing job presenting. Judges, please raise your digital hand if you have any remaining follow-up questions for any of the competitors tonight before we close the session. We will start off this round of questions starting with Eleanor and the optogenetic 3D bioprinter, and we will go in reverse order. I saw Jim raise his hand.
Sorry about that. Actually, I had one for another contestant, so I popped my hand up beforehand, and so
you can go ahead and do that.
I had it for a different one if you don't mind. So,
yeah.
Demetrios, if you don't mind me asking on this, so in part of your presentation, and excuse me because I didn't get to ask questions of you, is you had mentioned something about some insurance, so that if one of these employees go to an employer and then maybe possibly there's a problem, and would you then ensure that that employer is made whole if there's a problem? Is that what you're ensuring?
So typically how business insurance works, there are different types of business insurance. So there's, your typical general liability business insurance, your employment liability business insurance. And then the one different aspect here that comes in when you're working with this group of folks is fidelity bonding. And so for the specific population of people who are re-entering in this re-entry period of time, I think it's within the 6-month period that they've released, any employer, and this is Get By and any employer in the state of Alaska, and I think in most states in the country as well, this also applies. But if you're interested in hiring someone who has a criminal history, you can call your local job center when you have that candidate in front of you and basically say, hey, I'm sitting here with Demetrius. I'm interested in putting him to work, but I want some insurance in case something goes wrong. And so that's called a fidelity bond. And so right now, how it works is you would just call the job center and they would get you coverage, I think, by the next business day. That coverage would go up to $5,000, and it could stack 5 times up to $25,000. So yes, that is typically how that would work, is if there were any damages, that fidelity bond would be in place to make the client business whole. Yes, sir.
And then I had one other question. You had mentioned your fees. So like a percentage of wage and then also $1,000 fee. How does that compare to other, services that lease employees, that sort of stuff?
It pales in comparison, sir. So first off, the primary difference between Get By and your traditional staffing agencies in the state of Alaska is the plan is to offer emergent staffing tomorrow, not, hey, I need a dishwashing shift filled. Let me take 2 weeks to get that filled. So, sorry, the screen just changed and that really threw me for a loop 2 times. How does it fit in? So Winolo is one of the primary competitors in this market. Winolo is a $200 million funded staffing company down in San Francisco. And their fees are about 45% and up. And then the permanent staffing fee, instead of it starting at $1,000 and changing from there, it starts at around $5,000. And so I'm looking at trying to do a 20% of that, because I think that if I can break down this stigma of showing businesses that these people are capable and willing to work. Yes, I definitely will stay on for questions. That people that are willing to show up and be capable and work hard, that if you can put them to work shift by shift by shift and they show up and they're consistent and then they show their stripes, that they can be put to work and do actual things with their lives. And so that's the hope. And by breaking down that cost barrier and not saying, hey, you need to match this person for 2 weeks, it's one shift at a time, to then start building that person's resume and transferable credibility up from the ground floor, right? Because just having a criminal conviction can put someone in the pool of people that you don't even want to have in your business for some reason, even though they're probably great employees. So I hope I answered your question. I've taken up a lot of time.
You did. Yep. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Judge Jack and Kathleen, do you have questions for Demetrius or another competitor?
I have questions for the Airy Cherry.
Okay.
And I have questions for the 3D printer.
I'm gonna jump in here.
Okay.
So, all right, let's go ahead and stay in order. We're gonna go Demetrius first, and then any other questions. Please keep your questions rather brief. You don't get second presentations here. Then Robert Warner, then Brad, and then back to Airy Cherry. So on the table, and then Eleanor. So on the table right now, or any other questions for Demetrius, I hand it back to you, Angelica.
Are there any more questions for Demetrius?
Hi, Brian.
Yes. Brian.
Hey, Demetrius. Demetrius, so tell me, I downloaded the app and I almost signed up to be a worker, which was not my intention. So how do I, how are you going to recruit companies? Remind me how you go about getting the companies that are going to get these workers. Because maybe I want to be.
This is going to be a very concise answer. Basically, it's been very much one at a time, having these conversations with hiring managers and supervisors. I'm really looking for opportunities to speak in front of people, to speak in front of anyone who makes decisions. Big hiring manager conferences would be a great opportunity for me to get in front of people and to show that this would be an opportunity to fill some of their staffing needs. But other than that, I mean, it's kind of the chicken and the egg here. The product is ready. Businesses just need to go to getby.org, start listing shifts. Other than that, I mean, the app, I have the super admin mode on the app. I can basically show all the workers, all the shifts. I can do all the background checks. I can do all of the things. It's ready to go. I just don't necessarily have the funds to do a full-fledged marketing campaign. And I've been bootstrapping this to date. So I hope you can understand kind of where we are in comparison to where we could be if we had maybe $50,000 or $100,000 in the bank. So thank you very much for your time though today, guys.
Next up, do we have any questions for Robert Warner? I saw Justin.
Yes. Rob, I'm curious how the cutoff component of your invention works for the propane line. You mentioned some of the other appliances have cutoffs to kill the electricity to like an oven or some of those other things. Is the cutoff tied to the water when the sprinkler starts flowing, or is it separate?
Yeah, it's integral to it. The water produces enough pressure inside the system that it activates a pressure activated switch. And that switch then activates a solenoid that allows the propane to flow. When the fire causes the water pressure to drop, the switch is then deactivated and turns off the propane flow so that you have no more fuel in the system. The prototype works currently on 12 volts, and it's been working for about 6 months now. But I just finished a new solenoid valve that actually works off the water pressure. So, and it's magnetic, so it doesn't use any power at all.
Cool. Thank you.
I also saw Kathleen.
Yes, thank you. So just two little questions, really. So how is it freeze protection on it? People in Alaska barbecue in cold temperatures. And the other thing is there any, as you spray water, is there any issues with damaging electronics in a propane grill with the spray of water?
No, those are the questions I hadn't even thought of. The water in the system would have to be drained in between grilling episodes, and it's designed to do that. You only attach the hose when you need to do the grilling, actually. And the electronic components in a grill are pretty safe from water, actually. In fact, I've used the prototype about a dozen times, and the flame actuator still works. So seems to be okay.
Thank you for that. Next up, do we have any questions for Brad Schmitz? I don't believe I saw any hands up. Are there any questions for Serena and her team? Yes, Kathleen.
I believe you're muted, Kathleen.
So in deployment of these devices, do you see that you're going to contact homeowners? Is this going to go on public right away? How do you see that? And I think the second part is in Fairbanks, our air pollution are really in pockets. You know, the trees kind of trap things. How, you know, to get the 72,000 cubic meters a day, how are you not just creating donut holes in the air pollution? So.
Great, thank you for your question. Yeah. So I think that it's a twofold question, the deployment of the devices and then addressing different pockets of pollution. So as we mentioned earlier, it's really dependent on where we're installing it. In a place like Fairbanks, there are already air quality monitors distributed between throughout the city. And that's how the borough, city, and state and federal government monitors the air quality. How we'd want to begin with the deployment in a beta launch is to do a randomized control trial where certain air quality measures have an AIC area located approximate to the measure and others don't. And that would be the way that we test the different pockets. And so that might be in different levels, different heights, but that's some of the data collection we hope to do during the beta launch, and also working with the University of Alaska Fairbanks to help fund and have researchers work with us for that process.
So wait, you're going to deploy these next to the monitors?
So approximate to the monitors, the idea would be to use existing air quality monitors. So not putting it right next to it, right? That's kind of unfair. But on the city block further away, what is the impact there? And do them completely randomly. So you would be able to see if there was a change over time compared to the other ones.
The problem with that is that the monitors are in very different locations and they tell a different story. So whether you're cleaning up adjacent to an area could mean there could be a number of different factors. But then that would all be probably, you're saying you deploy them on some kind of public right away.
Yes, exactly. And doing the randomized control trials is how we would control for the variability of factors between locations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your question.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and go with Jack, and after Jack is Brian.
Yeah, thank you. My question is also regarding deployment. Who do you see actually deploying them? Are you going to sell them to municipalities and they would deploy them? And then a second question is, in what manner are they installed? On stands, on the sides of buildings? How do you see them actually being installed?
Great, thank you. I'm just writing down both of your questions there. So first off, we're looking at selling to governments, and that would be the Fairbanks North Star Bureau. And we've met with the air quality department there at least twice in person and more times virtually. And the idea would be to create strategic partnerships with the people in the area. So the areas that are holding the air quality monitors currently are already partnered with Fairbanks to do that. Warren is the Northern Alaska Environmental Group, and there's a few others spread throughout. As far as the installment manner, these are designed to be plug and play devices. So you just plug it into a standard US outlet, and it'll start running. And then again, the height will be variable based on testing during the beta launch. So in somewhere like Fairbanks, we may want to do it at light post height in order to collect particulate coming from chimneys. And so that's part of the beta launch and the data collection we're really excited to do and hope to do in Fairbanks.
So you see them possibly being in somehow attached to a light pole or a telephone pole or something like that, and in some means you're going to bring electricity to that device. I mean, there's just not going to be an outlet there already for you to plug into, so you're going to be bringing electricity to these devices also in some fashion. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, it really depends. And that's one of the things we'll be exploring during our beta launch.
Okay, thank you.
I hope this is a quick question. So what is the maintenance required? How often do you have to clean these? What's the capacity? Plug and play, I'm sure for the beginning, how long does it last? And what's the cleaning maintenance required?
Great. Yes. So right now we're working on developing a self-cleaning mechanism actually. And so we're still in progress for that. We want to launch a V1 that won't be using that just so it can start doing collecting particulate matter as soon as possible. That would be a manual cleaning process. Approximately every 4 to 6 months is what we're looking at. The self-cleaning process that we're trying to design takes the collection plates, knocks the particulates off of it, and then is collected in something that's a drawer. So when you slide it out, it's a sealed bag of particulate matter. And then actually, once it's out of the air, it's not toxic at all, and it can just be decomposed in the landfill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to go back to Eleanor. Are there any questions for Eleanor? I saw a check.
Yeah, so really interesting, Eleanor. I know that there are people that are working on artificial organs also, other entities. And you've explained a little bit of the difference between your process and their process. Have you taken this idea to any of these? There must be very large organizations that are interested in the concept. Have you taken your concept to these other organizations that might actually have the financial wherewithal to go someplace with this? I'm a little skeptical about your estimate of $10,000 to $15,000 in research and getting FDA approval and stuff like that. I mean, it sounds to me like this is an effort in the millions of dollars to actually get this from where you are to where it needs to be. And so, have you taken a step to try to get somebody larger involved with you?
This is a two-part answer. So the initial estimate that I provided was more for providing an actual prototype, a functional prototype. However, on the flip side, I have not. I just don't really have the connections that would permit me to reach out to these organizations. I'm not sure if they would really want to listen to someone just off the street saying, "Hey, I have this great idea. Here, you have it." But of course, I would love to be able to try that. I would love to try to reach out to those organizations and try and license the concept to them if possible.
So maybe if you were awarded one of these prizes, that would give you the funding to make that step, that allow you perhaps to interface with somebody that could grab hold of this with you, not necessarily for you, but with you.
Correct, and hopefully maybe provide the exposure necessary so that someone might actually see, hey, this is a viable concept. Someone is actually trying to take a step that no one else has tried before. So exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I saw Justin's hand go up.
Yes, thank you. So I'm curious on understanding the stage of development that you're at. Do you have any, even just an order of magnitude estimate as far as productivity, like as far as production rate, if you get to the point to where you can 3D print a kidney or a liver or a heart or something like that with this technology, can you produce them quickly enough to make a dent in the huge need for this?
Well, my guess is that current SLA printing is a fairly slow process. And I imagine this process is not going to be much faster, if not a little bit slower. However, having someone wait a week for an organ per se, or for a complex organ, is still significantly better than waiting months or a year. On the flip side, I'm estimating that doing something as simple as a skin graft would likely take as little as a day to print whatever the build area is. And those, of course, would be done in sections as necessary to provide the necessary amounts of skin for a burn patient in question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up for all of y'all. Thank you to our competitors for your presentations and judges for your questions. I want to remind you all that the fan favorite voting will open bright and early tomorrow at 8 a.m. Fans may vote once per day for each division. A quick reminder to our judges that we are taking a 10-minute break and we will gather back online for deliberation using the new Zoom link. For friends, family, and fans, join us at the Wedgwood Resort on Saturday, April 22nd from 1 to 5 for the Usabelli Finals and Award Ceremony. There will be appetizers, presentations, and winners will be announced, not only for the competitors, but also for the audience members to win numerous door prizes, including a round-trip ticket to anywhere that Alaska Airlines flies. Thank you and good night.
I have a question. Do we stay
Sure.
logged in? Do we stay logged into this right now, or do we log out and log back in?